Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Noxcast, your Equinox News Recap Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Hope. I'm the Managing Executive Editor of the Equinox.
And I'm Chloe Erno, the news editor, and today we're joined by Tim, Administrative Executive Editor.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's been a while.
Thanks for coming on, and that is true. For those who don't know, Tim was, I believe, our second guest on this podcast. Back when the walls were white behind us and there was no soundproofing and the cameras were different, and a lot has changed since then. I believe you're still opinions editor at that time.
I was. It was.
Yeah, but you could talk about your journey a little bit.
Yeah. So I've risen up the ranks. Post first appearance on this show, I was news editor, and now I'm administrative executive editor. I'm co-captain with Nate over there, and it's been a wild ride. I really enjoy what I've been doing as administrative editor. I'd like to think of it as more of the secretarial job. And there's a part of my brain that really just enjoys that paperwork aspect. So it's been good.
Yeah. So with administrative editor, that's more of like the business side of things. So anything to do with purchasing any equipment or submitting for awards or all the various other things we do, because we do a lot of different things when it comes to the financials is under Tim's purview. There's my previous job as well. So extremely important, and having that dual sort of co-leader structure has been really helpful to us and making sure things run smoothly. But I just think, Tim, you're just such a team trooper, like the whole time, just doing whatever needs to be done. And so I think it's been really great this semester. And it is a little bit bittersweet to some degree, since you are leaving for Germany next semester. Very exciting.
I'm departing for the whole semester. But no, it's been great to work with you, and it's been great to experience this role at least for one semester. I know in the case of organizing, purchases of awards and how we work on our fall trip, I can't imagine if you'd have to do it yourself. So it's been good. It's been a pleasure to be able to plan those.
Yeah. So thank you for all that you've done so far, and you'll be back soon enough, and hopefully back at the top, because I think it's been great to lead with you. So yeah. With that being said, we can just jump right into our news recap proper here, our last one of the semester. So that's cool. Starting off with news, we have a piece from me, actually. I think that's the first time I've said that all semester. I've not done as much reporting as I kind of maybe would like to in some cases. But this is a piece that I did. I did it for class partially, but also sort of double dipping with the Equinox. It's about the issue of food insecurity, particularly among college students. And the portion of this for class, this was solutions journalism oriented. For those who don't know, that's sort of a method of journalism where instead of doing the typical reporting where you say this is a problem and then that's that, you say this is a problem, here's why it's a problem, here's what other people have done to try to alleviate that problem, and here's how that can be applied to other places, such as your community. So this was one of the three stories, but it was the one that focused on a spectrum of solutions. So these are the on-campus resources, which are the Hungry Owl on-campus food pantry, and then the college chapter of the Food Recovery Network. And so I got to talk with the folks who are involved in that and sort of get their insights and to discuss some of the roadblocks, because while it's super important work, there's statistics in there: 3.8 million food insecure college students nationwide, 2.2 million very low food insecurity. At the same time, it's not exactly easy, and the questions always come up with funding. The funding is inconsistent. It's not provided. It's all sort of grant based and donation based. The Food Recovery Network, they've had issues trying to conduct recoveries, which food recoveries are basically repackaging leftover food from like catered events that would otherwise go in the trash. So that reduces food waste and then allows people to eat that food because they get a list of people to notify who might need food. So it was very interesting to talk with all those people for that article. I definitely got a really good idea of sort of what that's like, and to sort of highlight where we could potentially improve on this issue.
Yeah, and I know we've done a couple other pieces, especially about the hungry owl on campus, and it was really interesting to see just all these different people's perspectives on the issue and to hear what they're doing to actually try and combat that on campus. I think Emily Alexander is really working hard to try and alleviate the cost for students as much as she can, a lot of times through her own wallet. And I do appreciate her work very much. I appreciate what everyone is doing to try and combat that. And I've spoken to the workers of the Hungry Owl before, and I think that they're very dedicated to it and they're very happy to be there as well. And I just wish there was more being done, but that's less so the staff and more so on the institution and the funding.
No, I agree. It was great to read your report once you had completed it. It was very insightful, and I think it raises a lot of points that people don't necessarily think about. And the statistics you were talking about nationwide, and how we have 3.8 million roughly um, at-risk students as far as food insecurity goes, and I think it's a broader issue that we need to talk about nationally as well. So, and I agree with Chloe as well. It's great that Emily Alexander is doing what she can, and I appreciate that she is willing to spend some of her own money, which is really unfortunate because I think especially in New Hampshire we shouldn't be leaving that expense up to staff's uh, personal choices, and we should really be focusing on that institutionally.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's it's always that stereotype of like the broke college students and eating ramen every week. But I mean, it's like you never think about like why is that the case, and is that something that should really be poked fun at, or should we sort of further examine the issues there? Because with students going to college often, it's a new area, it's a new form of living. Purchasing groceries for yourself for the first time, basically, in many instances. So it's being a college student has sort of like unique challenges to it that aren't present in the broader community. Although, of course, food insecurity is an issue in the broader community as well. But it's also been an issue that sort of the spotlight has been refocused on, as we saw with the government shutdown, threatening SNAP benefits to people who receive those. And I just think getting the insight about people who are so passionate about this issue. And, if students can't get their sort of basic needs met, a lot of different colleges call their offices, basic needs office, and sort of the work surrounding food insecurity and, housing and other elements too. Basic needs, because, you can't do anything else, at least effectively, without having your basic needs met. And sort of, colleges and universities have been slowly starting to grapple with that fact over the past, like, I think 10 years or so. I think you saw a lot more of these resources popping up in the mid 2010s. I think in the case of Hungry Owl, they started in 2017. So it's hard to think about, but also it's very very important to discuss. But sort of on a similar note, we did do our editorial on a topic also relating to food insecurity, which is something I found through. It's not in this article for news, but in another set of the articles for that class. I was talking about donating meal swipes and sort of other programs that universities have when it comes to being able to have the freedom of, let me set aside like 10 up to 10 swipes or something, like just as throw out a number. And then that all goes in like a pool on the side, basically. So if a student in need needs to eat, they can apply to get a certain amount of free meal swipes. At Keene State, with our dining provider Chartwell's, we get afforded, I believe, 2 meal swipes per semester, regardless of meal plan, is what I was told. which is a very low number. And sort of the challenges that come with that. I kind of described it in the editorial discussion as like a gift card that is very micromanaged. Let's say that. Because you know, with a gift card, of course, you know, you have to spend at a certain place. So you have to with a meal plan. You know, you can spend at the Lloyd's and Hoot and Scoot and then get meal swipes. But also, you don't have the freedom, you know, like with a gift card where you can buy something with it and then give it to someone else. And then also we talked about, you know, there's a line in the editorial about paying it forward at the drive-through. You know, at McDonald's, you could say, I'm going to pay it forward and pay for the person behind me's food. You know, it's as simple as that. So why can't we have that flexibility despite the fact that we are the ones paying for those meal plans? So I think it was a really important topic to discuss.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this during our discussion, but I have roughly 140 meal swipes for the DC left for this semester alone, and I would like to be able to give it to other people as someone who doesn't usually utilize the DC. And I think it would be really nice if we could give them away or use them and pay for other people's, because a lot of people don't go to the DC or just like college resources in general. And it'd be nice to give it to someone who actually needs it and who wants that food. And when you're not even using it to begin with.
Right, certainly. And I think part of our conversation was talking about whether or not there's a profit incentive for Chartwells. I know everybody loves cost savings, and if you can limit how many meal swipes people can give away, you're lowering your expected cost, and you somehow come out of it on the higher end. And I think one of my concerns about that is I would like to think that Chartwells is already considered that. I mean, you should go into it assuming that everybody's going to use all of their meal swipes anyways, or you have grossly underpurchased your food supplies. So um, I think I think the corporation Chartwells should be more open about how students can give or should be able to allow students to give, because they're in a, like healthcare workers, they're in a very dependent position. And when you work in healthcare, if you if you derelict your duty in some way, that is a liability on your license. And I would argue that Chartwell's not offering not offering their services in the fullest extent is that a similar liability, because you have people that are under your care, and it is beholden to you to make sure that those services are provided.
Right, because, you know, you have a certain amount of swipes regardless. So, you know, how come you can swipe yourself in that amount of times, but then someone else in only two times? And then you're talking about, you know, using those swipes. It's pretty much just if someone is with you and they need it. So, you know, there's no program or way to set aside swipes for those who need it. During Thanksgiving, they do like the donated swipe, but also it's very unclear where those donated swipes go. And we didn't really include like that bit because, you know, it's kind of like an anecdotal thing, but talking about like workers at that time during that event also not really knowing the answer to that, I think is kind of, I think we should probably make that clear and be more transparent about it, because that's just, I feel like people just need to know that, you know, if you say that this good thing is happening, that we know that it is actually happening. But, you know, I'm not someone who has ever had a meal plan. I'm a commuter student, but I do know from like my experience going on campus and hanging out with friends, you know, use their bonus swipes, but those ran out very quickly. And then it just got to a point where it's like, okay, well, do you pay on your debit card now? And so I don't know. It's hard to square, you know, on one hand, addressing, you know, saying that food insecurity is an issue is one thing, but also trying to, at the very least, giving more flexibility. And I think, you know, it would be easier if, in a magical world that Keene State had its own in-house dining provider, and then the college could just talk to itself versus a private company. But knowing, the realistic situation we are in, at the very least, I think more flexibility with how you can use the meal plans and the swipes that you pay for is definitely in order.
Yeah, and it's sad that you can't just be able to give swipes to other people on a daily basis, in my opinion. I think that it's easy to put blame on students, at least by the company, like, why didn't you buy the larger meal plan to begin with? But it's also a matter of people being able to afford that larger meal plan or not. It's not always a matter of choice. And I think it would be really nice if we could just give it to someone. Like, if we're not using it, it's not going anywhere. Like, I don't want it to go back to the company. I'd rather it go to another student who actually can utilize that.
Yeah, and in the case of first year students, in the case of freshmen, it's yeah, they're mandated by the college that they have to pay for the Owl Ultimate or Owl All Access plan, which has unlimited meal swipes, which I believe is tied to a number, but it's an absurd number. I think you to run out of meal swipes on the unlimited plan, you would have to go into the DC probably 5 or 6 times a day, every single day. Um, but when you're making an entire class, an entire cohort of the college pay for that, and it's in your purview to. I mean, it's cost effective for you. I can't see why you can't provide that to all of the students. Um, even if you were to adjust your calculations and you said everybody can, everybody gets 3 meal swipes a day for every single day they're on campus. I can't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. Because it goes back to that liability issue. I mean, you're in a position of care over a group of people, and um, it it's unfortunate that there's at least speculation. There's no necessarily hard proof, but that there's a profit motive behind it, or a profit concern behind it. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and just I think it's one of the ones where there is sort of just like a pretty straightforward and simple solution to it, and allowing that flexibility. And so this is one of the editorials where we have definitely a more achievable goal. So I hope that those in those positions to be able to look at those policies would take a look at it and consider at the very least what we're saying about it.
yeah. Because if I may add, in the case of Chartwell's, I don't know the exact percentage, but Chartwell's is the largest food service provider of education systems in the United States. Because they cover both higher ed, and they cover K through 12. So with a company like that, I don't think having an easily accessible and transparent way for students to, at the very least, transfer excess swipes that they don't have. I don't think it's going to hurt them in such a way that they're going to be jobless.
Yeah, definitely. But now moving into our top story in Region and State is a piece from Abby Ham at the Keene Sentinel about jurisdiction local ICE arrests. So ICE has a program where local law enforcement agencies can partner with them to sort of work together on operations relating to immigration enforcement. And so far in the Cheshire County, so the county that Keene is in and surrounding communities, around like 76,000 people. Only so far Troy has signed on. Their police chief signed on to the program. And Troy is a small town bordering Keene. But there's questions now because, relating to ICE enforcement, is that they have been trying to conduct these operations, but then when it comes to sort of how it's been going in many other communities, oftentimes ICE agents or other enforcement agencies wait outside like courthouses during the dates of immigrants who or undocumented folks, whatever it may be, who have these court dates about their status, and then they wait outside the courthouse basically to furthermore maybe deport or take further action. But the thing with Cheshire County is that the courthouse is in Keene. And so there's a question about jurisdiction, and the Troy police chief sort of claiming that, if there's any sort of arrest or enforcement, that, he should be able to, even within Keene, have some sort of authority over it or whatever it may be. But it's a live question, and also something that I think touches on a lot of people's what people have recently been talking about when it comes to the actions of ICE and DHS and sort of concerns about that. I mean, for a lot of the time, there's a sort of misconception that things relating to ICE are, limited to only big cities. And of course, New Hampshire is not a big state, and our biggest city, Manchester, is only like a little over 100,000 people around that. So you wouldn't think of us as the typical target, but any law enforcement agency can partner with them, and then now we're sort of seeing that play out here.
I just don't understand how they're even getting away with doing this in the first place. I don't think you should be allowed to do it in any jurisdiction, even if it's your own. And it's like, they get mad about people coming here the quote-unquote illegal way. But then when people try and do it legally and go through the process, you're waiting outside the courthouse to arrest them. Like, there's just no way to actually break through the system. You're putting these people down every chance you get. And it has to be illegal. Like, even if we're not enforcing it, like, you just shouldn't be able to do that to people in the first place. You can't tell them to come here the legal way and then get mad when they try and utilize your system.
Oh, agreed. And I saw recent reporting of a hearing where Representative Goldman from New York was questioning Kristi Noem about the asylum process, and what I saw in her response was, it unfortunately seems like a just um, typical MAGA Republican response, where she's arguing for, like you had just said, immigrants using legal channels to get to the United States, and in the same breath, she can acknowledge that asylum is a legal channel, and when it no longer favors her, this argument of the asylum system is broken and so on and so forth. Tiptoeing around or tap dancing around the fact that what she's doing is illegal, and what in the case of this police chief in Troy I can't see how it's anything but illegal. You can't be hanging out the outside Cheshire County Courthouse, trying to arrest people during when you suspect their hearing is, or when you know their hearing is, and expect to get away with it. Like, you should, if you're so concerned, I would first recommend that maybe you should apply to the Cheshire County Sheriff's Department and see if they would like to hire you. And you could also, skip that, get out of Troy, and maybe join ICE. I don't know. Well, it's if you're worried, if he's worried about whether or not he has the jurisdiction to go out and do these things, which are almost likely illegal, they're not confirmed, but I can't see how they would be legal. Go join ICE at this point. Get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah, I did want to sort of also talk about what we've heard before, some reporting that we've done in the past about the question of like partnership between law enforcement and ICE. I think our senior reporter Ryan talked to KPD before about the issue, and they basically said that it's not something that they're interested in at all because they, already are short-staffed. They don't have many people to work with, and also it's just in their view not worth it to sort of go after or target a population of people who aren't actively committing crimes of like violent crimes or higher level thing. You're talking about basically in many instances people who the only crime they've committed is being in the country undocumented. So, I think from their perspective, they kind of see the having a partnership of that kind is unnecessary and putting more strain on already low resources for law enforcement and preventing them from maybe focusing on things that they should be focusing on more. So I would sort of agree with that sentiment. And there are, examples, basically, is what I want to hammer home, is that there are examples of, people in these positions that aren't just going with the newest, agenda or line from the federal administration about immigration enforcement. So I did want to touch on that. But now we're going to move on to our top story in student life. So this latter half of the recap is going to be a little bit more positive, thankfully, but some coverage of the academic excellence showcase from student life editor Justin, and photos from our staffer Amanda. And this was an event where people from various classes across campus and across many different departments present their research on different issues that they studied over the course of a semester. Many of the projects are group projects, many people coming together to work on things. I know that there's sort of a long history there with departments in particular like safety, and there's business. I saw a lot of different stuff there, but I was fortunate to be able to participate myself just as a student for my solutions journalism class about food insecurity. So that was a good time talking about sort of the culmination of all the work leading up to that, and sort of seeing what my other classmates had put together. But it's a nice little event to, I guess, showcase sort of some of the best of what we got going on in terms of academics, which, by the month, I guess, with all of the different, cuts and things like that, it's harder sometimes to reflect on the positive things that remain. So I think it's important to have events like this as to where we can remind ourselves that there are a lot of faculty who care a lot about the college and care a lot about their students, and a lot of students who put in a lot of work to, for their education here. So I think there's a lot of good things to reflect on there.
Yeah, and I was walking through the student center when they were setting up everything, and it was really nice just to get a look at all the posters and all the work that was already there in the student center. And I think it's just incredible that students get this like really good chance to show off what they've been working on throughout the semester. And I'm sure it means a lot to the people involved as well. Like, it must be really good to get credit for your work and to show it off to your classmates and people who wouldn't otherwise see it. And I think it was just really fun getting a look at everything before the crowds got there and all the work people put into it.
I unfortunately did not have the pleasure of being able to walk through it, but I've seen a lot of posts from my fellow classmates, and I think I agree. I think it's great that we're able to let students get out there and show off their research, and there's some interesting topics there as well. I know business management and safety have a long standing there. Um, but in the case of solutions journalism, I think you can really round it out with a lot of important conversations that people may not necessarily be into. And I know I had two classmates in my honors 290 smut class that had they had brought two posters, and it's well, and they were talking about interesting topics. I know one of them was about a legal case called the Miller case, which is how we determine what is obscene material. And I think a little more popular, or at least in popular news now, is there was a poster board about deepfakes and how AI is contributing to the betterment of deepfakes. Well, I mean, the deepfakes are getting better, so I don't know if that's good or not.
Yeah, well, so a wide range of topics definitely, and I think I appreciated hearing some input from different faculty and staff who were sort of just making the rounds and showing interest in what I had going on, what people in my class had going on. There was various different sectors for the different classes, and so it was a nice little event. And I did sort of voice was getting hoarse toward the end of it though because I was sort of giving that same spiel over and over. So, but it was worth it to get the word out. I think so. Good stuff. Moving on to our top story in A&E here is coverage of the annual Choreography Showcase. So, sort of speaking to again, that culmination of work. We're talking about an annual event where students in a particular class in the theater and dance department, taught by Cynthia McLaughlin, they come together and sort of act as both choreographers and dancers in these different pieces, which are all had different names and themes and things about them that I thought were really interesting. It's always a pleasure to see the different things that our students come up with this, and having that different take of like, as opposed to other performances, which of course are very much under the direction of professors, like more so like the professors or whoever's visiting sort of coming up with like, this is how this is going to go and this is the script, which there's a lot of value in that, and there's a lot of cool things with that. But a case where students really sort of are taking hold, and then they get to choreograph their own pieces and still have that input, but I just think the things that they're able to come up with is really cool.
Yeah, and I wasn't able to attend this showcase, but I stand by everything I said about the academic showcase. I think it's just a great opportunity for students to show off everything they've been working on. And I really appreciate that they seem to have given the students a wide range of creativity and independence on this. I think that's really great for us. And I just think it's amazing to be able to show off their work in such a way.
No, I once again I agree. It's another event I was unfortunately not able to see, but to be able to look at the newspaper and read about how Tad's choreography showcase and what students are able to show their creations, and I think that is really powerful for students to be able to show that and have performers bring their vision to life. And it's an important aspect at Keene here with our liberal arts goals. So I really enjoy being able to see that come to fruition, especially with our arts education folks. I don't know how many of those folks are in the education side of theater and dance, but it's good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I did want to give a couple brief shout outs here to our sports writer Jacob, who's been branching out a lot and helping out a lot with coverage in other sections. I know for a long time he was doing the straight and narrow with sports, which he's a great sports writer, but being able to see him take stuff in other sections has been a huge help. And so he wrote this article, and very appreciative of that. And also with A&E, there's just so many events that happen at the end of the year, and arts and entertainment editor Haley was able to reasonably, try to cover almost all the bases when it comes to that. I mean, inevitably there are going to be things we just can't get to. But end of the semester, everyone's wrapping up all their projects in the music world. That means you're doing your final performance, and there's a lot of I'm very appreciative and think it's great that there's a lot of different things for people to go to, but it does make things a little bit hard for us, and put a little bit of strain on like trying to figure out what are our priority pieces. So good on Haley for being able to put together the section despite having just so much going on this past week.
Yeah, and if I could add, I as as co-president of the newspaper, it's been really great to see Jacob come out of his shell and become just a better and more broad topic writer. It's yeah, he's coming out with great stuff, and it's nice to see him, lean into his full writing potentials.
Definitely. And speaking of sports, the top story in sports was a check-in with the club hockey team, done by our staffer Matt. The club hockey team up to this point hasn't had a very stellar record thus far, but I think something to take away from this piece was there still is an optimism on the team, and it is just the interesting dynamics of what it's like being in a club league versus a varsity league. There are some positives with it being less demanding on the club side, but also there are some things where it's obviously priority will be given to the varsity team in terms of organizing and things like that. So I think it's a lot of the times the club teams don't get shown as much love as they might deserve, or as much attention really. So I'm glad whenever we can get in some club coverage in addition to the varsity sports, which are also huge and important. But there's also an interesting story in this one about a couple of people interviewed were brothers who played hockey together in earlier schooling and now are playing together on the club hockey team at Keene State. So I thought that was a sweet little story, with the younger brother saying I had the option to go to varsity if I wanted to, but I chose to be on the club team. So even if a team on paper isn't doing extremely well with the numbers, I think it's nice to reflect on the passion that people have for their team, and why they do what they do.
Yeah, and I know we've definitely raised discussion about clubs versus teams at the college, and I think it's really nice getting the perspective of the actual players on this and how they feel about it, weighing the benefits and what they get from it, but also the negatives of not being a formal team with the college. And I think that it's also great we got such an interesting perspective from those two brothers. I think that brings a bit of a flair to the story and gives it a new life. But I think it was just a good coverage all around.
Yeah, no, it was a great perspective story just to see how club hockey is, managing their season. And I think with a broader issue, like a broader issue with sports in general is, it seems like club hockey's been having a pretty good season, even though they're not necessarily on the winning side of things. So, um, I I would say, if club hockey happens to be listening, you yeah, they're playing well, even though it's hard when you lose those games by a point. It can be discouraging because you have a longer losing streak. But no, I think they've been doing well, and I'm hoping they can come around. And it was really nice to hear about those two brothers that are able to continue that experience that they've had growing up and playing hockey together, and they can take it to the college level as well. Because it's always nice to have that player you can really bond with if you're on a long term sport, and you move teams together. So it's nice.
Definitely. But with that, that concludes our news recap for this week and for the semester. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Whether you listen to one episode or all of them or some of them, we really appreciate taking the time out of your day to hear what we have to say and tune into the news. It's important, maybe now more than ever, to keep an eye on the happenings of the college. I definitely think so. As always, I'd like to extend a special shout out to the composer of the music for Noxcast, our very own Equinox alum, Zach Keenan, the creator of the graphic for Noxcast, our very own art director, Elijah Fisher, and the editor of Noxcast, multimedia director, Noelle Hisgen. Until next time, happy holidays, have a safe break, and we will see you again in about 5 weeks. So have a great one. Thanks for tuning in.